Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media production. And our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today, we have Robert Green here. Robert Green's in our community, and he's also an EVS operator, tape operator, video editor, and he's worked in broadcast for nearly 3 decades. And we're really excited to have him to talk about all those things. And so anyway, it's going to be a great second hour. If you've got questions about playback and EVS and broadcast in general at a very high level, go ahead and throw those questions in for the second hour. If you've got general questions, throw them in for the first hour in Makana. You can vote those questions up and chat about them if you want, if you're in Makana. If you're not in Makana, you can simply go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, and you can ask those questions any time of the day. So it doesn't have to be, you can do it now, and we'll put them in, but you can also ask them yesterday or tomorrow. You can't ask them yesterday anymore because it's yesterday. But during the day, this could be the new yesterday for tomorrow. Just remember that every day is yesterday for tomorrow. That's your philosophical moment. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Mitch, what do we have?
Thank you, Alex. First up, Roscoe Jones from Madison, Indiana. Tomorrow is a look behind the curtains of Oz. But what are some of the personal improvements or favorite upgrades you have done or hope to do to your panelist systems? Bonus question, who plays the wizard?
I'm trying to think of I think that the thing that, I don't know, I feel like each piece is their own, their own great little piece of things. I think that, improving the camera has helped. I think over time, moving to Sony, as Mitchell will often remind us, was easier because there was this point where what happened was I shortened the depth of field I really wanted a short depth of field with my camera when I flipped my set. And when I did that, I found that I was out of focus a lot and so I was constantly rocking back and forth, trying to find focus for about 6 months until I moved to something that made a big difference. And then I guess the only other thing I would say is my ATEM that I use a lot. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I moved from my Logitech 920 to the Canon M50 Mark II, which helped a lot, except when I'm wearing something I should never be wearing, this moire type check.
That'll get you.
In the small one, my shirt's alive. But also, I've changed my mixer a couple of times. I've gone from the Mix Pre to the Samson MX124 to the Rodecaster Pro. So I have transitioned a bit, and I've stuck with the Stellar X2 after going through a variety of different, microphones, including, Sennheisers, Sheps, and a variety.
Yeah, I think that I settled on Courtney's. You see what I see? I got the Sony idea from Mitch. I got the mic idea from Courtney. I'm just slowly learning from everybody else here. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, it's good to follow Maury Good in there. Yeah, I would say mine is more of what I'm looking forward to do to improve things. I haven't made many changes, but I'm looking forward to a Mix Pre, hint, hint, so that I can improve my audio quality. I've got a little bit of background noise because this is my edit suite also, so I've got fans galore in here. So I would say that's it. And the only other thing I've done to upgrade is I've moved my mic closer to me so that I can get a little less background sound.
Next question.
Next one from Pedro G. Gonzalez in Oklahoma City. Office hours, lighting, and camera setups look fantastic. YouTube live streams looks a bit lacking. Will boosting the bit rate by another 10 megabits per second help the stream to look better, or is there a limit to streaming quality that YouTube or Zoom imposes? 4K?
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at 4K and HDR to move things forward. And so we're a little bit in a between state because we had to move out of the space that we were in. I toured a really good space yesterday. We'll see how that goes. So I think that I don't know I actually don't know what our bit rate is right now to YouTube because it's in a different space than what we've had in the past. I don't think I think the limitation is probably still just WebRTC. I mean, we're doing something in real time, or what Zoom's version of that. So I don't think that we're getting much lower quality based on our stream to YouTube. That's my opinion, but I don't know that for sure. Go ahead, Mitch.
Do you think there's anything in the Zoom crystal ball or YouTube crystal ball that will improve the quality of their playback? I mean, it's a target. Maybe they can get better.
Well, it's us looking. I mean, I think Zoom's always making it better, but there's a limit to what you can do in real time. I mean, I think that's the real issue that Oh, yeah. And so Mickey said that the current bit rate of the encoders to YouTube is 10 megabits a second. For the kind of show that we do, that's plenty. So we're not getting anything. We're not going to get anything by making it more. When you want to define what the quality on YouTube is, you should look at the quality of the graphics. Are the graphics sharp? Are they clear? Are they good color? I think you're going to find that they probably are. I think that our video is doing the best it can. And again, we're making a decision about doing it in real time. We are working on some solutions for next year that might not be that mix what we're doing now with SRT and other things where we could, potentially dramatically change the quality, improve the quality of the show. But it'll take more work on the panelist view. We want to make sure that we continue to be open to panelists just joining. What I'm talking about there is a pretty complicated kit that you might have to have. And we want to make sure that if we're going to test it next year, if we're going to implement it, we would really have to know how we're going to support panelists to do that. So we're kind of trying to figure that out. So I think that the limitation really is just how we get this back and forth between Zoom. I think we've pushed Zoom about as far as it can go, as far as quality goes between our setups and how the process works. But I think that there is a limitation. You make a choice that we want to be talking at 200 milliseconds back and forth, and there's a limit to how good. And I think Zoom is at the top level of what you can do at 200 milliseconds of latency. I think that's the bottom line there. Next question.
From Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. Andy asks, has anyone visited the light art installations in San Francisco?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I haven't yet, but apparently it's in Golden Gate Park. And if you look at their, stuck halfway. If you look at their website could have been betterly designed. It looks like it's got all types of...
Is betterly a word?
Are we
creating that?
I just created that word.
I'm betterly designed. I kind of like it. I don't like to be defined by dictionaries. So I think
have their images pop a little bit as you scroll up. I don't know why.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, they have all these LED installations. There's a lot you can do, and there's a lot of projection mapping in there too. It looks like they've got projection mapped on some of the buildings there, and the psychedelic photosynthesis. And
now they're just daring people. This is San Francisco, after all.
Yes. You do have to do some type of illicit drug, I think, to enjoy this the best. But I won't mention that. So there's different artists. Different artists have taken over different buildings and do these different art presentations.
How long does it say? How long it's going to be there?
Through before December 15th. I think it runs through December 15th.
Okay.
And there's some projection mapping on there, like nice little flow chart on someone's side of someone's office building.
Nice. It looks great. I love a lot of those things, and so one of the best ones around this time of year is in Japan, just north of Roppongi. I can't think of the name of that area there, but there's this huge open area, and as you might guess, the Japanese take it to an entirely different level of light art and so on and so forth. We'll see if we can find some photos of that. But this one looks great. I'll definitely try to check it out before it goes away. Next question.
Michael Patria from Poland asks, can I remote control Blackmagic Studio Camera G2 via Blackmagic Decklink 4K Extreme 12G? If not, what is the best solution to control, record, and mix with these cameras?
Extreme. You should be able to do that. I don't know about Decklink. You need to remote control it. You need a switcher. So you need to be connected to a switcher that's sending a return signal back to. Now, technically, I think you can have it go into the Decklink and then go out to the switcher. But I don't think there's any software way. There's no software solution that I know of that's going to allow you to shade the cameras through the Decklink return. So that's not. It's really built. Those cameras are built to be controlled, but they're built to be controlled by the switcher itself. There may be an option related to bridge, but it's still going to require a switcher somewhere in there to do the controls. There is a full SDK. We've been looking at it that can allow. I think these are the new cameras that theoretically people could build stuff for it. And I think folks in our community have been experimenting with that, but I don't think anything is out in the open right now. Next question.
Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York, caught a bit of NBC's Christmas in Graceland. Production value looked quite high with a couple of great sets and camera shots. Anyone else had any thoughts?
I haven't seen it. I have to admit, I'm not a big Christmas content person. Like yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I was going to say I haven't seen it however, I have seen another special that Apple is promoting. It's the lady, Miss Waddington
Hannah Waddington.
From Ted Lasso. And that looks like it's got awesome production value. So
it looks like they might have spent all the money on that one.
They did. I think Apple reached deep into those pockets for that.
I think Apple reaches deep into all their pockets for all of their content. I mean, there are times when I look at Apple I look at Apple shows, and regardless of the quality of the show, I just go, wow, did they spend a lot of money on that scene? Like it was just, as a person who works on these things, you just look at it and you're just kind of awestruck on how much, quality. I mean, there's just a certain sheen to it that you're just like, someone at some point said, well, we could do that, but we might reduce the quality of the look or whatever. And they're like, oh, let's go find
it's
$1
tangible.
million.
It literally is tangible, like you say.
It's an amazing thing. It's really fun to watch. And I think that I do think that Apple is kind of winning this process in the sense that they really focused on less content. They're spending less money. So what's interesting is they are actually spending less money than Netflix by a lot. Like they're spending 1/10 or less of what Netflix is spending on theirs. But what they decided to do is, hey, we're not going to spend so much. We're not going to do so many things. We're going to do the things that we do really well, which is a very Apple approach to the process. So anyway, I think that's turning out to be, fairly effective. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
And if you have any question about the money that Apple spends, look at the new Monarch series that's based on Godzilla and all those guys. It's awesome and pixel perfect in everything they do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Next question from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Pardon me?
No, go ahead, Courtney. Before we jump into it, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you had any question about where they get all that money, it's look at the price of those Apple products for you.
It's such a great model. It's a Kaiser Soze model. You always spend more money than the job is worth, and so they can do that. Which is, again, I mean, there's going to be I think that it's going to be really hard. Netflix has, they are the 20-ton gorilla, whatever. They have the most subscribers. But Apple and Amazon, we've talked about it a couple of times, don't need to make money on their product. Like they have other products that this is connected to. And all they got to do is add value to the product that they already have. That makes the hill for everyone else extremely steep. like it is just really hard to compete with those three. I think that those three are the leaders. I think Disney's, as we've seen in many articles right now, is deep in soul searching about why they can't seem to turn a profit on many things quickly. They're getting kind of bled out right now. So we'll see how that we'll see if they can turn that corner. HBO Max took away things that they own. I found that to be incredibly confusing as a user. Like I was like, oh, this was on HBO. I know that I can go see it. Taking away the things that you actually made yourself. It's one thing when Netflix takes away things that they contracted for. It's another thing when they take away the things that they actually owned. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, has anybody noticed movies that you purchased from Apple disappearing from your library? Or am I imagining it?
One disappeared.
What was it?
The Christmas version of Deadpool. It was something
what they did is they purchased?
What? It was
something
purchased.
That
I paid for it. And it disappeared, and I'm still bitter about it. Obviously, because it came right to the top of my mind. So what it was Deadpool without all the swear words. It was like the kids' version of Deadpool.
Funny.
And I think they made it to be more accessible and everything else. And I'm sure that somebody internally, because I thought it was great. It felt like I could watch it around somebody else,
like around
the kids. Sorry?
It was like the airline version.
What about the infamous Star Wars Christmas?
But those are not there. I mean, no one wants that one back. But I'm talking about movies that like I paid for that movie, and then it's just not there anymore. And
there's a handful of times where I've thought, oh yeah, I want to go check out that movie, and I go to look for it. I was like, and here's the thing. I'm not 100% certain I purchased it, but I'm really kind of certain I purchased it, and it just disappears.
I wonder about that too. There are definitely times when I go, I feel like I bought this already. Like I don't, right? Because I bought a lot of movies. I have like 600 movies in there. So I feel like I bought this before, like, and there's ones that, but the ones that I definitely know that I bought are there. I mean, I scroll through them to find the stuff, and I don't see the number going up and down. So I'm confused by it too. There's so many,
so
and the problem is there's so many services. There's so many services now. I don't really know where I watched it. Like, that's the problem, is that
that's a possibility.
But I do say, when I buy the stuff from Apple, I buy it because of the extras. Like, I don't buy, like, otherwise I'll just wait for it to show up on a service. Like, I'll just wait until it shows up somewhere else. So the extras are the only reason that I buy stuff. Because I want to, go through it all.
The problem with finding it on a service is in 12 months, 12 years, when you want to watch it again, it may not be available on a service. So then you're going to end up going to buy it anyway.
What happens is that I'd rather not pay for it if I'm only going to watch it once. Although I will say that, I used to go to the movies every week, and now I go to the movies 3 times a year. Like, it's like, 2 or 3 times a year. And I go to, I go to an IMAX, and I watch something that belongs on IMAX, but there's nothing else I'm going to watch. I'm not going to watch anything that doesn't feel like I watched Avatar and Mission Impossible and almost Oppenheimer. I almost went to Oppenheimer in IMAX. It was just a conflict of time. I'd gotten the tickets.
I find that as I get older, I watch way less movies, but I tend to watch them 2 or 3, maybe 4 times.
Only 4 times?
Sometimes, yeah.
No, you got to get. I don't watch the whole movie. So here's the funny thing is,
I know, you skip through the.
I skip the first act. Like, get that out of the way. We already know that, and then you just jump right in. You go, if you're somewhere between 39 minutes and 50 minutes on an average movie, that's the transition between first and second act. What?
Unless it's
I don't even know what happened in Oppenheimer. It's like general chaos. Talk about anyway.
Can we do a second hour on Oppenheimer?
We could.
No spoilers, please.
Yeah, no. There's just some choices that they made there.
They make a bomb, Mitch.
It turns out we bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima with it. It was horrible. Like, it was, but I'm sorry I ruined it for everyone. Like, they're going to turn it around.
The boat sinks, Titanic.
Yeah, but it's a good movie. It's a good movie. They made some decisions that I think probably cost them. My guess is about $200 million. $200 million decisions, mostly around clothing or the lack thereof, means that they destroyed their. They destroyed the distribution possibilities of that movie. For no reason.
You seemed bitter the day after you watched it about the no special effects comment. Would you mind elaborating on that?
This is what happens, by the way, if you're a producer and you're watching it and we look up and we only have 6 questions. This is what happens. We just kind of mosey on along. If you're wondering, why are they talking about this so much? I'm like, because we got time. So you gave us time and we're going to take it. I think that there's all of these have lots of effects. And so anytime, they hundreds and hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of visual effects. And a lot of them are, maybe they're not, putting in 3D whatever, but, most movies like the one that we saw probably have some set extensions and definitely have a lot of roto. And so there's stuff being done to these things all the time. Usually what I think is when people say they didn't do any work they didn't do any effects, it means they spent enough money so that you can't see it. Like, it's not, because that's what we're really seeing is when, we thought that, Jurassic Park was an enormous lift at 120 visual effect shots when we did that, then, Star Wars, I think was, I think the episode 1 that I worked on, I want to say 2,200 visual effect shots or something like that. And so when you do that many visual effect shots, they can't all be good, and so even, and so I even have a shot that I worked on that every time I see it, I go, I need one more round on that one. And so, I think that's the challenge for a lot of these movies.
My problem with Oppenheimer is I went and saw it in IMAX 15 perf. Which is very hard to do since there's only 13 theaters left in the world.
No, there's more than
13
that.
in America.
In the United States, yeah.
Yeah. And, that's my rest of my world.
Okay.
But
there's one in your town. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter how many there are. There's one in your town.
There's 90%, 99, 98% of that movie is kind of head and shoulders close-ups or it takes place in dingy little rooms. You know, you've got this marvelous, expansive, you want to see Lawrence of Arabia or something in 15 millimeter. And on a huge IMAX screen, you know, you're looking at the inside of a dingy little room for 90% of the
but
thing through those interrogation
you,
scenes. It's like,
when they show it to you, though, boom. That's all I'm saying. It's literally in this case.
Ooh,
I do think that the hard part is that the challenge for theaters is when they up the ante a little bit and they really sell that, it makes it hard. I think it actually makes it harder to get people to go to the films in general. Like, so for instance, I wanted to go see Oppenheimer. It's supposed to, I almost went when I did I couldn't get in when it first started because it was a re-release. Then I wanted to go see it. And on the re-release, I went to see it. And it was a conflict in my schedule. But I was only willing to see the 1570. like I was like, I'm not going to pay to watch to go in some small theater or to even see a digital version in IMAX. I was like, no. So I was like, I'm only, if the 1570 exists, I'm not paying for anything.
1570?
1570 is 70 millimeter 15 perf. And so what happens is
film projection. Yeah.
It's a film projection. And what happens is that normally
out comes the telestrator.
Yes. I took parts of the part. So when I scribbled, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. So anyway.
When you guys ask questions, you get the show that you want. when you don't ask questions,
you get the show that we want. So so normally 70 millimeter film, of course, you have, this, oops, the perf. The perfs are how many perfs here, right? And normally with a 70 millimeter film, it looks like this. It's like IMAX in its infinite wisdom figured out, what we could do? We could turn it sideways. And so they turned it sideways. So the IMAX frame is turned so that you get 15. It's 70 millimeter, but it's a 70 millimeter process, but it's turned on its side, and that makes it a 15 perf. So that's why it's so large. It's a much larger frame because it's on its side. Anyway, so anyway, and so you have this enormous. I think that the number that you see floating around is equivalent to 18K. And an 18K image is what people say is and the only camera that we know of that's digital that is close to that is the Sphere camera that just came out. Like, that's the only digital camera that we know that can shoot video at something that's close to IMAX's the effective film resolution. Anyway, and when you talk to people who have seen the 15 perf, I don't know what Courtney thinks of the 15 perf, but it's better. It's sharper, it's bigger, and so especially on a big screen. Wouldn't matter if it was a small screen, but I think I hope that IMAX expands that, because I think that we have reached peak movies. Like, we're not gonna. Like, it's all downhill from here.
Well, the digital IMAX is dual 4K projectors is what they've gone to. Yeah. One on top of the other one.
For brightness.
And they're offset by half a pixel or something to increase the resolution.
Yeah. But I think that we've reached peak film. So you have to figure out why should people go to the film? Go to movies. When you look at 85-inch screen TVs for less than $1,000. The 85-inch screen TV from 10 feet away is the same size for you watching as going to most AMC theaters. So that's so you have the same aperture, that's there. And I think that, so now that the price point with, the sound bars and everything, I think a lot of sound bars sound better than a lot of average theaters anyway. So I think that, that's going to be a big challenge as things move forward. Next question.
Vic Hernandez from Springfield, Missouri. What's your favorite way to access podcasts?
Go ahead, Chris.
Vic, I'm lazy, so I just use the app in the phone. And, it works seamlessly when I go to my car because I have CarPlay in the car. And by and large, it works great. I'm super intrigued, although I haven't really done a whole lot of research in terms of like going to check them out, but I've heard a lot about the Podcast 2.0 apps. And the 2.0 apps have a whole bunch of extended features, including the ability to recognize different artwork per episode, which has been part of the the RSS rules. I don't know what the word is. For a long time, but very few apps have the ability to see different artwork. They also do transcription and live notifications, and there's a lot of things in the podcasting 2.0 protocol is the word I'm looking for. That is super interesting, but I tend to be super lazy, and I just use the phone that's in the app, the app that's in the phone.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I used to use Overcast, and I used to use it, and I think Overcast is great. It's probably the best podcasting app that's out there. The problem is that I have a policy that when I change phones, I don't ever transfer from one phone to the other. I open the phone and I start installing apps as they arrive to me. Like, oh, I need that app, and then I go find the apps that I had for that. But I don't. Otherwise, I've bought or downloaded 500 plus apps. I can't put those. I don't want to put those on. I don't want to fill up so over a year, I'll slowly fill up 10 pages of the old apps and the new apps that I want. But the next year starts at 1 page again. And the problem that I had with Overcast, to Chris's point, was the podcasting one that Apple made was good enough that I started listening to stuff on there, and then I just it was easy. I know it's not as good, but that's always the challenge, right? Is it good enough? Good enough is the enemy of great. Go ahead, Mitchell.
If you're referring to serial podcasts, ones you watch on a regular basis,
I think it's
TV,
just how to listen to them. Oh,
yeah.
You're listening to serial podcast. Oh, on Apple TV.
On an Apple TV, because I want to settle down and enjoy the comforts of my media room to do it.
While listening to a podcast?
Sure, why not?
Oh, okay. No, my whole use of audio is so that I can do something else. I think that's the challenge with video podcasts is that the reason I listen to a podcast is to fill time. I mean, to learn, but I fill time. And I think that the other challenge for podcasts, we talked about this on Mac Break, is that you have that there's so many other things that are in audio now. Like, I have this thing called Noah, which I listen to incessantly, which is not news over radio or news over audio. Sorry. It's all these magazines and everything else that are all published, and they read them. And man, and here's the worst part. Here's the worst part is that I was paying for Foreign Affairs, which I've been reading or now listening to since I was like 12. And so I was paying for that, and I was paying a lot of money for that. And then I noticed that what Foreign Affairs did to save money was they used Noah to do a handful of their stuff. So all the things that were via audio, the whole magazine wasn't available. Only the Noah read ones were available. And then I realized that Noah had all those articles in it, and it was like $8 a month. So that was enough of that. Got rid of Final Foreign Affairs.
A lot of podcasts now are also with video. I guess that's the
but it's just they're not very successful. Statistically, the audio ones are the big ones. I mean, they might have video, but 99% of their audience is still audio. Go ahead, Courtney.
I use iHeartRadio in my car and on my phone because they collect
for podcasts.
Things. Yeah, amazingly enough. Because some of them are live, so I listen to them that way. And of course, on my PC, I'm old school. I use Winamp because it whips the llama's furry posterior.
Yeah, the thing that that we're experimenting with graymatter.show, which is the podcast that I work on with Michael Krasny, or a couple of us work on with Michael Krasny, is the idea of doing a live broadcast for a handful of people where they can ask questions so the audience can actually be part of the conversation and then publish it later, and so that everyone else can listen to it. And we're still playing with that format, but I think it's a fun format. Hopefully more people will do it. Next question.
David Brady in New York. Has anyone using the OBSBOT cameras gotten an OSC control to work? For the life of me, I cannot get any command recognized by this device.
Yeah, reading stuff online, it seems to be people who are having trouble with it. And that's one of the reasons that we were interested in the OBSBOT was specifically the API. And that's what really set it potentially as a competitor to the Insta360 Link. Unfortunately, its controls have been limited or not really accessible. So it turns out that, I don't know, I'm sticking with the Links. I have one OBSBOT. but I've been kind of sticking with the links. A quick reminder, of course, that you can ask questions throughout the hour. You can put them into Mukana. You can vote on them up and down. If you're not there in Mukana, you can ask officehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Or you can use this little QR code. This is Chris's favorite part of the show, is that when I point to the QR code. Look, Chris, you could do this, Chris, right here. Askofficehours.global. All right, next question.
Next one in is for me, and I have a question about what your procedure is for recording interviews. This is pre-record questions.
Yeah, explain, Mitch. I don't understand what you're asking.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was kind of vague because I was typing and reading at the same time. When you get to record somebody in a documentary or for an interview, what do you say to them before the camera rolls? What's your general procedure for that? For example, here's what I do. I ask them their name and I ask them to spell it out, and then we get ready to roll. Just so in case somebody didn't write it down, it's on the tape. So when I'm building the lower thirds and everything, it's all there. And that worked for me great. Except I'll never forget, I was interviewing people at a award ceremony, and the late and great Henry Kissinger was there. And I said, "Would you please state your name and how do you spell it?" And he looked at me like, "I'm Henry Kissinger."
Yeah,
just like that. And I'm like, "I'm sorry. That's what I do for everybody."
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
That's one part of the ordeal, Mitch, is, the business end. I will say that when it comes to interviews, my preference, and it's not, I think it's the minority of people prefer this. I like going into an interview knowing, I don't want them to know anything that we're going to talk about. I mean, obviously, you're the rep for some product, whatever, we're going to talk about your thing, but I'm not going to tell you what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to send you questions. I'm not going to do any, send my questions so I can prepare. I don't want you to be prepared. I would rather, as an editor, storyteller, I'm much more interested in that moment where you see somebody thinking, I think from a storytelling standpoint, that's way more interesting than somebody going, "Oh, hold on, let me get my notes up." And, it's like, no, I don't want you to do that. And so most producers want to give people an idea. They want to try and make them feel comfortable. And I like people feeling a little bit uncomfortable, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, when we start an interview, a lot of times I just say, "Hey, here's the deal. We're going to ask you some questions. Try to include the question in your answer if you can." You can, so if I ask you, what happened with breakfast? Don't say it was good, or respond to it going, "I had breakfast and it was and I kind of give them some example like that. It's different every time. Breakfast turned out to be the one today. Anyway, so but I ask them to do that. I say, "We're going to ask you some questions and that's it. And otherwise, don't feel like we're going to edit this down. Don't worry about what you're saying or how you're saying it. Just say the things that come to you. The most important things to be there." Yeah, go, Chris.
I will tell you, as somebody who's edited a lot of interviews, a lot of corporate interviews, a lot of interviews where on the tape I can hear the producer say, "Please include the question in your answer." I would say that more than 50% of the time, 60 to 70% of the time, that awkward interjection of the kind of question that they put into their answer gets cut off. Most of the time. And what it means, and because there is a difference in the person's mindset thinking, I have to work in the question to my answer. Oh, and here's my answer. It feels different. It feels staged. Yeah. Most of the time, it's not needed. I understand sometimes it is. Another thing that I like to do with people is I'll tell them, I might ask you the exact same question again. I'll tell them this ahead of time. I might ask you a bunch of times. It's not because you're doing it poorly. I need variations for myself.
Right.
And I always throw all the shade on me. I screwed that up. Oh, let me fix, I'm so polished. Could I get you to do that one more time? I think I bumped the camera or whatever it is.
You got it out again.
I always take the blame. But the whole thing about, please answer the question. And this is, thousands of interviews, most of the time,
it's good
it gets cut out.
It's good note. The the one thing that I don't do it because I feel like it would be inauthentic for me to do it at the same level that was done. I think I mentioned this in the past. We had a DP, and he he's just a cool guy, just a cool looking guy, and he was just kind of like, he was always very engaged, but for the first time he did it, I didn't realize what he was doing until after I saw him. We worked with him a couple times, and he's really, really good at what he does. He'd walk up to the person. As soon as he walked into the room, the first time, and it was always the first time he saw that person, he'd just go, "Wow, you are so much better looking than you were in the pictures they sent me." You look great. This looks really, and he had already pre-lit it. And so of course they looked great. They probably did look better than the pictures, but he did it with such verve. It's just like, oh man. You could see people just go, they're ready for the show. It worked. It definitely, but I felt like if you don't do it well, it's going to really fall. So I don't have the guts to do it well, but he did it perfectly. And but you could see people just kind of straighten up a little bit and be ready to do the thing. One thing that I will say about interviews is that we are very, we worry a lot about the entire experience. So if we're doing it remotely, it's if we're sending them a kit, for instance, for an interview for Michael Krasny's show or for other shows, we send it to them. We want to do the tech check before they show up. So we want them to do it the day before, or the week before, or whatever. And the reason we do that is because there's a whole bunch of things that aren't going to work, and we're going to have to work with them on. And we want to make sure that we get those out of the way so they forget about them when they show up, and they can be present. The other thing we worry about is just, there's sometimes when someone has a technical problem and we can't, you'll hear over comms on our end, just leave the knife in. Don't try to pull the knife out, because asking them to fix things is just going to make it worse. They're going to get into a bad state because their state of mind is super important. And then the final thing I'll say about interviews in general, I come from a lawyer's family. We do direct and then cross. So we ask open-ended questions that are allowing them to just run on and what happened then, and how did you do this, and what happened after that, and what did you do there? And then for the client, especially for corporate, we ask pretty direct questions. Can you talk about this in specific things, and make sure to talk about this, and this, because we're trying to get clips. As Chris said, about 80% of those get lost because they just don't come out well. But we don't do that. The mistake people make is that they do that at the beginning. They start trying to micromanage their answers at the beginning. You lose the interviewee really fast. Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I was going to agree with Chris. I think that asking it a second time, there's a better chance of getting a better take. They may have had a chance to think about it. So just to reinforce what Chris was saying, I like the idea that you don't say to them right up front necessarily that we need it in the form of a question. Because you're right, people do tend to ponder that a wee bit. Let them do whatever they want to do, and if you didn't get it that time, do it the second time.
Next question.
Next question from J. Rob in Sarasota, Florida. Panel's reaction to the news that Unity software with a company reset walks away from the film VFX and Wētā Deal.
I think that they found that the water was really deep there. So I think that this is really hard, and I think that they're getting some attention from Apple. They're also probably focusing more on their core strengths, which are going to be AR and VR and games and so on and so forth. So I think I do worry about them a little bit, Unity, because I think that Unity is really a bridge for Apple to get from one place to the other. I don't know if Apple really is hoping to do all their work inside of Unity. And so I think that while Apple's giving them a lot of support, I hope that that's not what's driving that right now. So, but I think that they're probably finding that, the problem with, and this is why people ask, why doesn't Final Cut pay more attention to the pro users, in Hollywood? It's because they have a whole bunch of niggling little requests that they want and all this weird stuff, and they're apoplectic when they don't get them. And, and there's 1% of the market that needs that, or 0.1% of the market. And that's why it's really hard to focus on that market. And I think that that's what they found, was that they just found a lot of people that really have very, very exacting needs that they need, but nobody else does. Yeah. So I think that's probably the challenge. Next question.
And it's another QR code question. This is from Teresa Sabin of Moorhaven. Which lens hood do you recommend for the Apple iPhone 13 Pro without breaking the bank? Do you recommend leaving the lens hood on all of the time? And can the lens hood be used while using a gimbal or a stabilizer? If not, what do you recommend?
And it's from the QR code. I don't use any lens hoods for my iPhone. But I probably should. There are definitely times when we pick up some stuff when we're shooting. I mean, one of the things that I'm really working on is going towards like, how do I actually use the phone as a filmmaking device? And that's a whole different thing. For instance, one of the things that I'm looking at is getting a lot of the moment lenses, because the moment lenses are going to allow me to, always stay on the 1x. The 1x sensor, the 24 millimeter sensor, is the highest quality sensor on the phone. So if you're going to shoot something that matters, you're going to end up only using that sensor out of the bunch. But if you want a longer shot or a wider shot, you're really adding lenses to it as opposed to that. So it is something that I'm researching, but I haven't done enough of it to comment on it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and I don't have an iPhone, but I did find the most ridiculous one out there that's only $29. Now, to throw that in your pocket with that on there, that might be a problem. But this is from the Profession anti-reflection cell phone. And one of the things they point out about it, if you're shooting an aquarium, you stick that up against the glass, and you don't see any of the back lens reflection of your phone reflecting in the glass if you're shooting at your local aquarium. But it also it has a screw-in filter too, so it takes screw-in filters, so you can put a nice polarizing filter on there to kill reflections. The one question I had about Alex, if you do use those lens holders / filter holders on your iPhone, does that mess up, especially if it's iPhone 15, does that mess up the LiDAR that it's using for autofocus? If there's a reflective piece of glass or a neutral density filter in front of it, because these big filters cover the whole camera, array of cameras that are on the back of the phone.
Yeah, it does. Like, you can't use it. But I don't think that the autofocus. I think the autofocus is not completely dependent on the LiDAR. It is.
So they use contrast autofocus as well.
They use a variety of different things. I mean, they use Magic for the autofocus. They use everything that they have there. But it's a fairly effective system. The thing that I'm most amazed by with the Apple, and confused by a little bit with the phone, if I take a picture as portrait, it'll take the picture and it keeps that depth data, and you can refocus it inside of your iPhone. Interestingly enough, you cannot refocus it inside of Photos. Like, you can't open the app, Photos app, with a portrait and then refocus it. I'm like, what the what? Like, it's only working inside
using
the phone.
Computationally adjusting the focus.
Yeah, but that data's there. Like, there's no reason to not do it I mean, it's super frustrating for me to have to go back to my phone to refocus it, or I was like, I don't understand. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
About 15, 20 years ago, Google, in their internal development, changed a switch, and they switched everything to mobile first. Like we're gonna concentrate on mobile first, and then we'll get to the desktop stuff. And somewhere along the way, Apple has kind of done the same thing, it feels like to me. Like, there are things that you can do in the Photos app in my iPhone that I only wish Final Cut could do. I just found this out this morning. If you can search for a sound in Photos, so try open up your Photos app and search for the word laughing, and it will find the word laughing in a screen if there's a sign on the wall that says no laughing here, but it will find the sound laughing in a video clip. And not only will it find it, but when you go to play the clip, it will put a little blue highlight bar over the portion of the clip where the laughing is.
Yeah.
That to me is really cool. It's also a little creepy because it means that my phone is constantly looking at and analyzing everything that's in my Photos library.
I think that the interesting thing is that your phone's doing it. Like, it's keeping that data pretty locked down. Like, it's not like if someone else was doing it, it'd be all that data is, I don't know, being used to figure out how to serve you up ads for milk. But in this case, it's a much, I think that Apple's
so if the
approach to it is less creepy.
Doing it, So if the phone is doing it, and it may very well be that it is the phone that is doing it, then there's no reason why my desktop app can't do the same thing, except for the fact that they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's the thing that I'm frustrated by is because you get it like, and it's just so much easier to see, like it's one of those things like I can see the, a big image not on my phone and figure out exactly what I want and then be able to deliver it. And, because the phone is good at some things, it's really clunky. Like, oh, I want to send eight circle takes of an image to somebody. Doing that on the phone is a real pain. Like, it's just a real pain in the neck to be able to preview the phone, decide if they're good, decide if they're sharp, select them, and then send them all as a group. It turns out to be like, it's much easier to do on the desktop. So it goes back and forth. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, would Blender have anything like the Unreal Engine Marketplace or Unity Asset Store, or are most Blender workflows focused on modeling everything?
I think it's a huge mistake for all applications to not have a marketplace. I think that what especially Unreal does is genius, and I think that it's a massive mistake. I think that should be everywhere. I think that when you open up Motion or Final Cut, you should have a marketplace of lower thirds and sweepers and effects and everything else that you can buy for $8 here or $15 there. When you open I think that not having a marketplace in your app so that people can just get what they want. I think Adobe does a fairly good job with stock photos, where you can very quickly within Photoshop search for things and buy them. I think that people are living millions and millions and millions of dollars on the table by not doing that, by not building a way to let people distribute those things within the app. But I do think that the Blender community is much more model driven. I think people use Blender to model more than they use it for a lot of the other tools that it has. So I think that might be part of the problem there. Next question.
From Danny Grizzle in Longview, Texas, interested in a new carbon fiber tripod with a 100mm bowl. Vinten, Sachtler, and OConnor, all owned by Videndum now, and the Flowtech legs seem identical. What are the pros and cons of various brands or models within brands? Sachter Aktiv heads?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know. I found people with carbon fiber tripods, they don't last as long as the aluminum ones. And they do get a little bit creaky noise making. You got to be careful with them because they can creak and get into your soundtrack if you're leaning on them or doing any kind of pans or tilts. So be aware of that. Sometimes I've had problems with them sticking in cold weather or hot weather when the temperature changes, sometimes the clutches. But so I don't have any preference because I haven't used all of them since they've been taken over by that Videndum or whatever it's called, that single company that now controls all of the tripod manufacturers, Vinten, Sachtler, and OConnor. But I have used the OConnor and Vinten ones. No, it's Sachtler one, Sachtler and OConnor, and find similar problems with their carbon fiber. But they're great because they're a lot, they're lighter and easier to transport over your shoulder when you're carrying a heavy camera.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I have a Sachtler behind me over there. There it is. And that's a Flowtech. It's carbon fiber. I have not used it very much. However, it is a lot lighter, I can tell you that much, than a standard tripod where you have to unveil it. And the other thing that's cool about it is, again, this is technology and history, sort of tells the story. If you need to move it or level it, you just pull the two clips on it and you just raise it to where you want it to be, and it just instantly goes there. There's no unfurling things and doing stuff. So I like it, except I would be concerned if I got it into a sandy or gritty, dirty environment, whether or not the sliding tripod part would get interfered with and then, of course, break down.
Go ahead, Chris.
Back when I used to care about tripods, what Mitch just said about the ease of which that you can adjust it is super important. And if they're all using, you're saying that they're all owned by the same. If they work exactly the same, it doesn't matter. But definitely look at that. And really, really, really the thing that you're looking for in a tripod is the head. And this is where a good field trip to B&H, if you have the ability, you could make it there, Danny. You could get there from Texas, where you get to touch and feel them and play with them. We really should do an office hours B&H field trip one day.
It's so expensive every time I go. There's very few times I've gone to the B&H where I haven't spent at least $1,000.
Maybe we could do a B&H East Coast trip and a Film Tools West Coast trip.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Absolutely. I'm actually in LA a couple times this week. Courtney are going to eventually going to have coffee. Anyway, so and I owe Courtney a 15-foot XLR cable, which I think about every time I come down to LA. Yeah. So anyway, I don't spend a lot of money on tripods, and the reason for that is that the tripods that I use for production are so expensive and they cost so little because they're such hardened objects. Oftentimes it's $75 to $100. I would have to use it so many times for it to pay off because the heads I get, the head is typically $10,000. Like I'm looking at, Sachtler 2575s, those types of things. And I just I can't afford what I want. The only tripod that I really owned that I don't own it now, but Pixelcore had probably 3 of them, which was the hot pod. So these are the OConnor used to make them. I think they're now Sachtler. They're moving them around in the brand. I don't know what that means. But the hot pod basically had a pneumatic center, which did a little like what Mitch is talking about. But imagine having basically 2 feet that you can move 75 pounds up and down. So if you have a teleprompter, we used it primarily with teleprompters because you have a camera, teleprompter, everything's all there, and you just open a little thing and just lift it all up on a pneumatic center. And it was life-changing, and they're really hard to find, even to rent. So I owned a bunch of them because they're like with the head, they're like $5,000 each. So that's the problem. Next question.
Next question from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. Not long after the early end of Tuesday's office hours, I received a notification from X that Alex Lindsay was live. It was interesting. Alex, what was that?
Yeah, there's a funny thing. I didn't know this, but evidently because we're always on the show from 7 to 9. There's another show from 7 to 9 called Creator Coffee Talk, and it's done by the man about tech. That's his tweet. I literally opened up Twitter to see how a tweet that I had done earlier that day was doing. Saw this little this is live, and I was like, I wonder what that is, and I listened to it, and I was like, it was an interesting conversation. And then, of course, I found myself, let's figure out how this works. I never talked on Twitter Spaces before. So I was like, I don't even know if my system will work, but I raised my hand. And then I ended up talking for, 20, 30 minutes with folks there. So even when we finished this show, I ended up in another show, filling out the rest of my time before about 9:05. It's really good. I think, I talked to him, and I think that we're going to, find a collaboration where he comes on our show and talks about their talk and what he does, and then we broadcast it to his show live. And so I think that's kind of we were going back and forth. There's a really good community, very different conversation than what we have here. It's creator talk, but it's really more around the business end of things and how they the market and those types of things. So I think it's a really interesting conversation, and it happens to happen exactly at the same time. So figuring out how we integrate together is still something I got to figure out, but we'll work on it. Next question.
Sean Johnson from New York asking, good morning. I have a LiveU LU300 and considering purchasing a couple more or one of their transceivers. Before I rely solely on LiveU for my transmission purposes, has anyone had any issues with LiveU network backbone going down? Same question for LTN. Thanks.
Not the network going down. I mean, obviously the challenges you have with LiveU is that if there's a lot of people using a cell coverage in that area, it works not as well. Now, if you're using the LiveU if you're doing an Ethernet connection and you're using existing Ethernet stuff, I think that you'll probably be fine. So a lot of people use LiveU as contribution, where it's just an easy way to get it from here to there. They're not actually using the cellular connections to make that actually work. I haven't used the 300, so I'm familiar with the 600 and the 800, but I'm not used to, and I had a 400 very long ago, but I don't know what the 300 does. But if you have an Ethernet connection, you shouldn't find that. I think LTN, I don't have the whole thing of the LTN network going down, but we do have, occasional, transport and code issues. Sometimes the frames aren't perfect all the time, but overall it's a pretty solid network and very much a standard network among news gathering at this point. Next question.
And it's for me. I'm asking or commenting, the Tuttleman domed IMAX theater in Philadelphia is permanently closing. What does that bode for other art IMAX facilities?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Probably very little, because the domed screen version was called OmniMax, and it required a 180 millimeter projection lens, which was a special lens and a special mounting for that projector, and it was only film. I don't think they ever converted any of them to digital. And well, maybe they did that theater. But since most IMAX theaters are flat screen and not dome screen, which is you have to produce for the dome screen with special lenses used to shoot everything. So that it maps to that curved dome screen. And there's only about 3 or 4 of them left that have that OmniMax projector. I think Reuben Fleet Theater in San Diego was one of them, and
Pittsburgh
was one in Vegas, and was one in Vegas for a while at the Caesars, but I don't think it's there anymore. And finding projectionists is because it was film, unless they've converted to digital, finding projectionists to run the things is getting very hard as well.
Yeah, it's a really hard format to. And what's funny is that what you needed was a camera like the Sphere camera, which just came out, to produce content for it. So it's really interesting. The timing may be off as far as when to take it down. Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, if you had to say something to one of the benefactors, I know the family member that runs the Tuttleman Trust, what would you say to them about that?
Put in a regular IMAX. Like it's not. I wouldn't shut it down, but I would think about putting a 15. I think that 1570 theater might become more interesting in the future. I would also think about if you're thinking about theaters in general, we just have to really consider what is the use of theaters and is it film distribution. And I'm not clear it is. I think that theaters are a great place to get a lot of people together to enjoy something. But I think that if you look at whether it's AMC's, Zoom activations or IMAX's live network, there's a future coming for theaters, which is that we're all going to get together and experience something as live. And I think that's a much more compelling business model over the next 5 years than film. I think you're going to see film slowly wind out as far as, what we're not going to see. It's not going to go away. So I'm not saying that film is going to go away. But the number of screens will drop dramatically if they don't find something better to do with them. They're not going to be able to maintain the 10,000 plus, 12,000 plus, whatever that number is now, of screens for film distribution. It's just not, the model's not there anymore, and it's not going to come back. And, Disney's problems are mostly self-inflicted and based on, content. But it's also just a general malaise of the market. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
What's really strange about, I asked a question, obviously, but I know David Tuttleman of the Tuttleman family that put that up. And I also know Penn Ketchum, who has Penn Cinemas in the entire region, both of which have done that. And I just was curious about what could we do to encourage that type of usage. And I think that's good advice. I'm in a position to do something about it.
Yeah, I used to go to Penn theaters in Pittsburgh. I guess there was a couple of them outside of Pittsburgh.
Lancaster.
As well. Yeah. Next question.
Next question is Douglas Carmichael. I read that the name ChatGPT sounds like something else when said with a French accent. After all the OpenAI drama dies down, could you see the company rebranding their flagship product in the same vein as Bard or Claude?
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it's been integrated since Microsoft owns 49% of OpenAI and now has incorporated the ChatGPT engine and a lot of their models into their Copilot, which is now integrated with all of their products, all the Office products and in Windows 11. You can just pop it out and ask questions and have ChatGPT answer. So they call it Copilot. So they have the right to change the name, and in French, it could sound a little scatological, but so it is. They may have to change the name.
I don't think that would be the reason that they would change the name, but I think that ChatGPT I think it's a bridge. It is not designed to be the final product that everybody's using all the time. It's a way to get out there and be part of the conversation and be part of letting people experiment with it. But I don't think that their goal is to make it the be-all, end-all. Their goal is to have more people adopt it as an API, and use it as the back end. So they're not, so I think that I don't think they really care how big. I don't think they're worried about the brand anymore because eventually it'll become something else, or it'll become the back end of many, many things. We'll be talking to Robert Green here in just a second about EVS operation and replays and broadcast. Just a quick reminder that on Saturday we have meetings every Saturday for volunteers of some way, shape, or form. This Saturday we're going to be having a meeting for the new office hours panelists. So if you're interested in being a panelist and you want to talk about those things, 9 o'clock after the show, from 9 to 9:30, we'll have a discussion about what it takes to be a new panelist, answer your questions, and kind of give you a sense of how to get started. So sign up for that. That goes out in the email. You can sign up to be a panelist there. Welcome back to the second hour. And really excited to have Robert Green here to talk about EVS and replay. You know, when I didn't know that EVSs exist. So the funny thing about it is that there's the world of broadcast, which has EVS is kind of part of everything, and the world of events where we use things like Playback Pro, and we use things like Watch Out, and we use things like spiders, and so there's this whole little world over here. And if you grew up in that world, which is mostly what I grew up, mostly in an event world, you didn't know that an EVS existed, and it was like this. You didn't ever hear about it at all. In fact, I went to a presentation, and it was about how EVS they've expanded how they did distribution for the World Cup. And I thought, oh, they do encoding. I had no idea that they had any kind of hardware that was connected to this. And so a client that comes from broadcast had asked us to cover an event, which we're good at, and stream it. And it was a 24/7 event. And they said, well, what we want you to do is just time shift a little bit, so that we can have if someone runs, if one seminar runs a little over, just time shift the other one and have it just start right after it. And we can put a couple little things in there and then run it. And I'm like, how do you do that? like I didn't say that to them. I was like, oh, sure, no problem. Like my response to the thing is like, yeah, absolutely, that'll work. And then there was like these frantic calls of like, I don't like, who does this and how does this work? And I came up to speed on what an EVS was. And then we started using, now I'm kind of like, every time there's some playback, I'm like, we'll just use an EVS. Like I just, and there are other ones. There's Dreamcatchers and there's Mirai, and a couple other playback things. But the one you see the most in the field are these EVSs. And Robert Green has spent a lot of time on these EVSs, and so we're really excited to have Robert on to talk a little bit about what it takes to, or what an EVS is, and how he uses it and how he has used it. So welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you for having me. Hello, Alex.
Hey, how did you get started? How did you get started in being an EVS operator?
Well, started in tape. So just kind of like a nightmare a tape operator would ever have.
There we go.
A little AI fun there.
Yeah.
I started in tape as an intern at a local TV station here in Los Angeles and poked my head in with the chief editor. And he kind of let me on the slide, gave me a stack of tapes with a script on it, go in there and go put that together. So gave me some very basic instruction on how to use an edit controller and left me to
and
my
these
own
are
devices.
These are like you're doing mark in, mark out, right? So you're mark in, mark out of these big PVWs that are the playback system. Is that what you're doing off of Betacam?
Pretty much, but we had edit controllers, so that was a little less rudimentary. So we could use something like this. So on the left is a convergence edit controller. It's mark in, mark out. You can do insert edits and all that fun stuff. And then I learned
and the funny thing is, when you did this, right, the tape had to come up to speed. So when you marked it, it had to go back and then play forward and then have the other one hit record when the other one was at speed at just the right frame. Is that right?
Correct. So we had an AB roll edit controller, use the AMPEX ACE. And so that's the room where we could do dissolves. The other rooms were just simple cuts, basically like using an RM440.
I'm sorry, I'm being old, but I just want you to, like, if you're listening to this, just remember there was another room to do the dissolves. There was another room that you went to do the dissolves. Anyway,
that had Robert. The two better edit controllers that AB rolled a beta and a UMatic. And so when you're talking about that, you set your edits, do your marking in and out, or just to mark in and have it be open-ended, they would have to roll back the two machines, then be in sync, then it would roll. And sometimes if it's a sophisticated controller, it could nudge it into sync. But if it didn't lock up and go into sync, then it would abort the edit and roll back and try again.
It's amazing that we ever edited with tape. Like, it's just, it's more amazing that we ever edited with film. Anyway, so you started in tape playback.
Started with editing, and then occasionally was thrown into the playback room when needed. So we had 4 beta machines, and you just fill them in order as you go down the rundown, kind of like a tape monkey, boom, 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 and queued them up and go. And it's live TV, all kind of very fast paced. And
when were you introduced to an EVS? Because EVS has been around for a long time.
Yeah, they're celebrating 25 years in EVS right now. So they started in the 90s. And I just got exposed to that later on in my career when I started in cable entertainment and did studio shows there. So we started in tape, and we had to use an edit controller that would sync up to control 8 VTRs, so that we would master a show that had 2 different versions, 2 different audio configurations. So we had a dirty version and a clean version, so that we could push the clean version to international, so they could resell the stuff and when translation.
Define dirty versus clean.
Dirty versus clean. Dirty would be without the graphics. So like when your QR code comes up and our names come up, there's a version of the program feed that does not have any of the graphics on it.
Right. That way you can go back and fix problems if those graphics were wrong, but you can also restrap it if it's going out to if you're a different service, right?
Yeah, or pull it as an archive tape, reuse the material in the future. A couple years down the line, your graphics package may change, so you could put the current graphics package on top when you play back.
And what was your first job with the EVS?
First job was tape, record and playback. And we stuck our toe in doing mastering these entertainment shows, and they were basically we were mastering the show onto tape, so that it had to go to time. So we would use the time code of the tape, start at 1 hour, and first segment would be 12 minutes, and then we would skip forward on the tape 3 minutes and 50 seconds for the commercial break, and then insert edit the B block and go on and so forth. So we stuck our toe in with going from tape playback to server playback with a profile, Grass Valley profile server, to play back our tape elements. And then eventually, after the Japan earthquake, we needed to learn how to master the show in server.
What happened with the Japanese earthquake, the earthquake in Japan?
So this has been talked about on the show before. There's basically they wiped out the only tape factory that was still making beta cam tapes that are the broadcast standard.
And these are, I think, specifically the SRs, right? This is the SR tapes that were produced there, and they had 2 of them, right? They had one in LA that was producing it, and one in Japan. And occasionally, I don't know what the exact thing was, but they took the one in LA. They would take it back every couple of years and recalibrate it with the one that was in Japan, and they just happened to both be there at the same time.
Right. Unfortunate luck there, or not.
And the issue was that the tape was already, everyone knew tape was on its way out. So the process of rebuilding those tape machines, it was like, if it had happened in 1995, they would have rebuilt them. But happening when it happened, Sony wasn't sure if it was going to make sense to go through the millions and millions. I don't know how much the impression I get is they were really expensive. Like, are we ever going to get a return? But what it did do is it drove everybody to solid state. Like, it was just, it was, or drives or EBSs or whatever, but it would just, tape no longer was an option. And that happened, it happened very suddenly too. It was not what everyone was ready for.
Yeah, and we were using the large form digibeta tapes, so that we were scrounging to make that happen, and then we accelerated our transition to mastering on server. So.
Right. And there's on the West Coast, do you remaster the show when it's done as much as they do on the East Coast?
We do fixes. So they may have a version 1 of a package, and then they saw something wrong, and then they will give a revision, file transfer it down. And when we had tape, we actually did match frame edits and played it back into the, rolled it back in with an insert edit. So we used the VTC buff box there, which is kind of like a mini CMX in a little box. And so we could do insert edits, and you see the row along the top are all the VTRs, but it also included the players as well as the recorders. So we could match frame and edit into a piece of tape or the server, and we were able to, do fixes. Also, if we had any language or anything else, we could bleep something out or other things like that.
Right, because a lot of these shows they're close to live, but they're not live. They're recorded in the afternoon for an evening record, and a lot of times live looks a lot rougher. Like when you see, like Thanksgiving Live was a good example. Like if you see it on the East Coast, it looks rough. This is on the Food Network or whatever. It's good, but it's a much sloppier show than you're expecting. But by the time it gets to the West Coast, they've made 50 or 100 edits in an EVS, and and the producers walk up with a list, and they just list out like, these are all the things we need to have changed, and the operator goes to town, to make it happen. Now it looks like those controllers so that's really where that EVS controller came from. Do you have a picture of the EVS controller? Is it really came from it's almost a function of the old more hardware controllers, right?
It is, and probably a more elegant version, because I think in sports, the key thing is you look along the top row, you see little red buttons, the F keys. Those are basically parking lot spaces for clips. So you watching something live, you make a mark in anticipating that's likely to be the beginning of a clip. Right. And then you mark an out. Oh, this play just happened, and you push one of those buttons that are not highlighted, and it creates the clip into that position.
So is like in a football game, you might mark in as they walk up to the line of scrimmage, and then mark out when the play is over, knowing that that's going to be a clip that you want to be ready to hand back.
Or you would probably mark in at the position where the replay is going to happen, like the key part of the action. Okay. You can anticipate making that mark, and you can always add to the beginning. So you can just you just see something happen and you hit it on your system, and knowing that you can still scroll back because everything's there. Yeah, and I'm not a sports person normally, so I'm kind of I do what I would do in any situation. I'm anticipating what the clip is going to be, what they would likely want to see played back. Well, and just to back up, explain how an EVS works, because it's recording all the time, right? EVS is always recording. So to the question of that, how do you start an interview record? We just say over the intercom system, EVS is always recording. So. Well, the funny thing, because after I learned how an EVS worked, we did it for this one show, and I was like, oh, this is like life-changing. I was like, I can just move things around and everything else. We were doing all these live hits for things like Dreamforce and everything else, where we have a jib coming down, swinging down into it with a host that doesn't do this all the time. So they're a little deer with light in eyes look on their face as they work on it. And we were doing those live. We were coming out of a conference, and then we'd come to these live. And as soon as we saw the EVS, I realized, oh, none of the Olympic stuff that we see, and none of some of it's live, but very little of it. And I realized that, so what we would say is, hey, you're going to see the jib move, just start when you're ready. Just look at it, and if it doesn't work, we'll start again. And we would do it. Now we were sometimes still recording it when we went live. So we would do it because we wanted it to look live. We wanted not to have it be like a different time of day or anything else. So we would just start 3 minutes before we had to go live on the EVS, and just let them, and if we had to redo the start a couple times to just get it right, or, whatever. Some people nailed it every time. Some people needed a try or two to get it off the ground. And then we would just be in it. But the point is that because it's always recording, we were able to, just kind of play it out at our leisure. And again, like for big conferences, that becomes super powerful because, again, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it today and have Robert on was because when you understand an event of this playback system, you're able to, like, once we started adding EVSs, and people, literally groups of people would come over at events. These are big events with the biggest event companies in the world.
and they'd come over and circle around the EVS asking me what it was, because they were like, it was like this new thing, this new shiny thing that they had never seen before. Because what we were doing is, this conference ran a little over, so we'll just go ahead and just start the next one 3 minutes late, even though it's so we're just we could be 30 seconds behind real time, and it's simply playing back because it's really just a database. And Robert's got a picture of what the server looks like versus what the controller looks like.
Yeah, and it started as simple as a big giant server, and EVS is basically a supersized TiVo and an 8-track machine all in one. So it is always recording, and then if you when it runs out of media, it just starts to delete the oldest piece of video on the system. So
right. And oftentimes that's like 24 hours. Is that a pretty typical one? Yeah,
so we have a 20-channel system and across 2 servers now that runs most of the channels are 16 to 24 hours depending. By the end of the week, we build up material. So it's every time you make a clip, it takes media away from the live spool or 8-track system. So you can always go back and grab things because it's always recording on every channel.
Yeah, and so think about that again, 20 channels recording all the time. And because really what you're doing there is it's just you're marking in and marking out endpoints. So the data that it knows, it's not doing a lot of processing. It's just saying, I'm going to start playing here and I'm going to end playing here.
Yeah.
So
and the key that has made EVS so successful is that this server is pretty much bulletproof.
Yeah.
And we have more controllers and interfaces, and those are all on Windows, and IP Director does a lot more than what the LSM, the old school T-bar controller, can do. So there's more database, there's editing, all sorts of features there. But the base of the system having a rock solid server, the Windows can have disk issues, but the server that's recording the media is always working and almost never fails. So.
Yeah. It takes a little bit to set up. Like, it is sensitive to genlock. Like if it doesn't have a signal, it's like, I can't do anything for you here. And it's those kind of things. But once you get it going, it's a machine. And how long do you feel like it took you to get comfortable? The controller is the big thing. So the controller is both really powerful, but it's also what keeps most people like the EVS is very cryptic. It's not something. This is not a device that you rent and go, well, I'm just going to rent an EVS and then I'm going to run my show. You hire someone, and usually they've spent at least a year on it before you're willing to hire them. And usually most of the people we hire, 5 to 10 years is kind of, table stakes. Because it's such a complicated machine. You were going to say something. You were showing a little bit of that controller in action there.
This is the LSM controller, which stands for Live Slow Motion Controller. And yeah, it can be very cryptic when you look at it, but it's pretty well ergonomically laid out.
Yeah.
So you'd have your right hand on the wheel and your fingers crab-legged over to those buttons where it's play and E to E and a couple other functions. And you can, scroll, get back to the clip. And of course, like what you're saying, time slipping was particularly powerful. I mean, really all you have to do is you could literally pause live TV, make a mark in, and, use the jog wheel to get to your position, mark it in, and then go upon cue, play, and you've just time shifted live television.
Well, and really think about, like, this is the device that's being used when you're watching any NFL game or most games in general. You're watching an EVS running, and the thing to remember is I know enough about how the sausage is made that watching a game, I'm watching and listening to the cadence, and I'm just amazed. Like, I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different replays, from different angles, and it's all going to happen in 35 seconds. Like, we found the clip, we identified it, we're playing it out, we're talking about it, drawing over it, putting graphics over top of that. It really is a magical, system that kind of gets built in there. Now, again, on a daily basis, I'm talking about sports because that's what it's used for a lot. But on a daily basis, what's your day-to-day look like?
My day-to-day, it depends upon the position I sit in. I either sit in and edit position or a playback position, and we're using IP Director. So if we look at this one, that's our typical workstation, 2 screens on IP Director, and it's just another controller, except it's a database controller.
But it feels a little bit more like an editor, right? Like a nonlinear editor. Like you've got a couple tracks now, but it doesn't do effects, right? I mean, at least the last time I used it, we can't like do fades or
dissolves and wipes. So
dissolves and wipes, yeah.
Yeah, and when we're mastering a show, two different shows have different workflows for assembling the show. So one show, we're actually recording live to the timeline. So,
right.
And when we have a bust or a mistake, we will go back and we'll stop the edit, and then we'll play the last 10 seconds of a sound piece and then roll back in. And then at the end of the segment, we'll just pull up all the edits.
Well, and we do shows where we run the show 2 minutes behind or 5 minutes behind, and we can correct things. If someone who's really good at IP Director, we'll have them sitting there, and the whole show is running 5 minutes shifted, and then we have made edits to things while the show's running. Like, they ask, like, if I've got a 5-minute window, I'm telling them that you can edit up to 2 minutes of that. Like, we need a little bit of room, but you can cut things out of it,
So are you playing the timeline live?
Yeah.
And then okay,
yeah,
that's kind of what they do that with national news, I believe. So
yeah, so we run in
you're
that
chasing
timeline.
Live.
Yeah, we're chasing live. Yeah,
right.
So it's super effective, and when nothing goes wrong. And what's interesting is a lot of times when we're encoding, we might encode the real-time one as well as the backup one, and then we can deliver out, we can right at the very end, because we're encoding it to HLS segments, we can deliver the one that is clean, right after the show. So
yeah, so in our case, we're live, kind of semi-live to the timeline, and then then we know what the segment time is for the A block, and then we move to another timeline for the B block, with it striped to adjusting for the commercial break. So A block ended at 12 minutes, B block comes in at 15 minutes, and then we build the show, and then the line producer already has a sense of how timing of the show, and they know where they need to kill things as they go down the line.
Yeah, and like some of the national television stuff that I've sat in the back of, it's recorded about an hour before. Like it's not like it has to be pretty close. But you hear there's 2 people that are sitting there the entire time talking about how heavy or light the show is.
Yep.
We're 20 seconds light, we're 40 seconds heavy, we're whatever, and they're negotiating how to fix that. And that's all then right at the very, they're trying to do it during the show. And if they can't, then there's like a little bit of like, what's the filler that we're going to put in a promo or something.
Or if their timing doesn't work out, wow, there's a lot of beauty shots at the end of the show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I asked, because I was talking to the BBC, that all that temperature stuff at the end is just closing up the hour.
Yeah.
Like time-wise. It's like,
that makes it super lazy for a segment producer, line producer, because that's a lot of squishy room you can play with.
Yeah, exactly. It's a funny thing. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Robert, thanks for being here. You've obviously made it through the tape room into the new digital age with the EVS device. Let's say that I want to get into the EVS business. There's not one nearby that I can experiment with, and it's not something you purchase for the sake of learning it. How do you get the experience to get the job?
Well, vocational schools are very great with that, or your community college. Many of them will have a TV program of some sort, and they do have some good equipment. So here in Southern California, we have Northridge, we have Santa Ana College, and a few others that all have TV programs. And one of the really beautiful ones, so I hear through my friends, is the Annenberg Television School at USC, and they have a newsroom, and they put on a real show, and they use state-of-the-art equipment, and I believe they're using EVSs also, but and they use the newsroom system like iNews and things like that. So you start with a vocational school, and then you can get into doing shows like sports shows or the news shows that a local campus will produce.
That's great. Go, John.
Hey, Robert, are you going to go through the actual technical workflow of who's pushing the buttons and what the TD's doing and et cetera, et cetera? Are we getting there? Or am I just being nervous?
Sure. Well, we're just kind of
Let's go ahead. Yeah.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah, like,
so
walk us through the process.
Okay. So for my part, let's say my day is a playback operator, and we two different shows kind of have two different workflows. So we'll have two shows for this one production, and then the other one's for another network, and then it has a different flow. So stuff is, for us, for a playback operator, stuff is file transferred down, and we have a rundown computer that tells us what is going on in the show. And I look for my tape elements, and I basically stack the show in order. And we have with the IP director as a database, we can have lots of different IP directory windows open, and I can have one just for the segment of the first show and start to put things in position order, and so I can move them around and have them ready for playback. And that first show we do is done out of order, and all we're doing is that when a certain talent comes out, we record their segments.
Right. So you don't care about them being in order. You're just grabbing them as they're available.
I put them in order first off, just so that they're accessible to me right away. So no matter what direction they're going, they want to do elements in the A block, I can load them up according to the rundown right away. And it's a very manual process for this show because it's so fast turnaround. So you look at the screen on the right, and there's these little VTR panels on the bottom right there, and we have 6 of them, and we can load the clips in according to the rundown order, but we can put them in, just get them out there as fast as possible so nobody's waiting. So, and then they're triggered by the TD. So this show has kind of a strange workflow. And then we clip off each of those segments, and then an editor next to me is dropping them into a timeline, and he's building the show with placeholders. The commercials are in there because it's syndicated, and he has templates for that.
Or there's holes, right? So you might have like local holes, like so you have the syndicated ads that are there, and then you have just black frames with triggers, right? So. Right,
and the playlist and what we do is we pre-build the commercials, and the commercials will already have the blacks in them, and those are kind of done ahead of time. So one of my other jobs is creating commercials, and you got to go get the ISKI code and download them and put them into a playlist, and then you take the playlist that has all the commercials with the little black spacers and all that fun stuff, and it always hits a certain length of time, and it has to match, and lots of detail to double check to make sure that's right. Then you flatten that into a clip, and then that clip is used by the show editor and on another EVS machine doing IP edit, and he's dropping them into the holes.
And that's pretty much done every day, right? I mean, this is your setup, so that's kind of like something happens in the afternoon.
That's every day. Yeah. So in the span between noon and 7, we're putting out 3 shows. So 2 shows that air that day and 1 show that airs the next day. And one show is played out over the fiber line as well as file transfer, because there's still some affiliates and some people that need it different ways. But we feed it out so that it gets at another location. It gets all the closed captioning and all the other little things it needs to be played out. So
and the when you say file transfer, what file? What are you sending affiliates as a file, and how do you send it to them?
Right click, send to.
So, I just didn't know. I didn't know. Are you using Aspera, or is it do you know what the file format is, or do you like? I'm just curious what they're being sent.
Usually it's like MXF50.
Right.
So but I think it gets wrapped. It might get a different wrapper for different people. So we can send out in a group where it'll send it to 4 places. It'll send it to our Avid. It'll send it to our archive system. It'll send it to a copy somewhere else, and then it goes out to our cable hub, our broadcast hub, master control that's in New Jersey, and then they do whatever they want, and it actually bounces to another place in Denver.
Right.
So.
Let's jump into the questions.
All right, first one from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Galisteo, New Mexico. What are the indications technically of playing off a growing file? Does the recording have to be a special format for that to be possible?
Go ahead, Robert.
For a growing file, I think for EVS, when something is transferring into us, it just, on the VGA screen, it just shows up blinking with a % sign and then the clip name.
I mean, you can correct me. I mean, I know that there is file transfer. There's a file transfer process. 99% of the ways we get things into EVS is to play them into them. So like we want to give it to it in the format that it wants to record as. So when you're talking about the growing file, the EVS, we find it simpler for that from a growing file perspective is to, it's just baseband SDI going into the machine, right?
Well, if you're playing it to yourself, yeah. So, and then you're letting like a frame shaker or through a TD switcher or a router handling the format. Then if it's in the router system, then it's already a format that EVS likes. If it's a file transfer in, then it goes through an X file and gets transcoded and then lands in my EVS machine. And it can be a growing file. And if I see the file name, I can drag it and put it into player right away. Wait,
I'm sorry. That just short circuited my brain. So this is not how I use an EVS. You can run a growing file in through X file.
Well, the X file dumps it into the IP director, so it
right. But you're not taking a growing file into X file, right? I mean, you're taking a whole file into X file, or is it? Can you take a growing file into that?
Well, it comes from an outside source, and it has to go through X file to get into EVS.
Right, but it's a defined video. Like if you're doing if it's growing file, it's typically something that's coming in as SDI. And the EVS is recording it, right?
If you're taking it through SDI, then it's basically playing it baseband, and then it just sees video. It doesn't care if it's a camera or a video clip. So,
but you're not. Yeah. I think we're on the same page.
So then it's live, but we also get file transfers. So that's where the EVS. If it back in the olden days, now we have 10 gig networks and things are a lot faster, but when they were slower and we had to wait till if it was a 2-minute story, we had to wait till it was at least halfway to be safe. And then we actually could dump it into a channel and start to play it back while it's still file transferring and growing into the EVS.
And fundamentally, this is EVS is conforming everything to the format that it needs to do the database, to be able to cut. And this is kind of the underlying principle that I've had for a long time, but it was more underlined after I started using EVSs, which was that I conform. There's a difference especially when you're doing production, is to have everything conform to the same format. Because and that's what. So EVS isn't jumping from a ProRes file to an MXF file to a it is going when it's playing, it's going from one EVS file to another EVS file. No matter what you pump into it, it's going to end up in the format that it makes sense. Is that right, Robert?
Right. So if you're feeding it in through a switcher, by definition, it's going to land. It's in the right file format, or the video format. It's been predetermined. Or if it's a file transfer, then it's going through an X file and it's transcoding into our system.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, that was actually my question: is how do you get a file off of it as original as possible without having to go out to master control or the switcher?
Yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
That's get it out or get it in.
I think you just talking.
How do you get a file out?
Oh, out.
Oh, yeah. You file transfer it and it goes out through the X file again. So, or you play it through baseband. So.
Yeah, and X files are. I mean, it's just a converter. So it's just gonna you tell it what it's like a gatekeeper.
So there are more PCs that do different tasks for EVS, but the EVS server is just a big giant video server itself, and there's lots of other things attached to it. So our IP directors are individual computers. So, we'll have 3 operators that all are on different IP directors accessing all the same materials. And now we even have AWS involved, and we have some virtual IP directors that live at AWS, which is kind of clunky and weird.
Next question.
Phunsak Dorje from Dharamsala, India. Hi, panelist. Has anyone used a Rolland P20D for instant replays? Please explain the workflow. Is this the cheapest hardware solution for an instant replay?
I don't know, Robert, if you have any experience with that or not.
I do not.
Yeah, this is
not on that one.
The hard part really is a lot of people have tried to find a less expensive way to do playback. And what I will say is that you can get something that kind of works for playback. People have hacked HyperDecks. There is, Evertz. When Evertz is trying to find a cheaper way to do things, you know that there's an opportunity because everything that Evertz does is really expensive, but they have a dream catcher. Ross has the Mirai. Is it Mirai? I think that's the Ross playback. Mira. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mira. That is their solution for that. And those are, again, tend to be less expensive at the in the software area. There's 3Play from NewTek. That's there, and then there is for Softron makes one called mReplay that will do it all on your Mac. So there's and that's mReplay is probably the least expensive one that I've used, and it's worked fairly well. I don't tell a client, hey, we were going to use an EVS, but now we're going to use an mReplay. We do it as it's a really good one for the price. It's not a replacement for an EVS, and neither it has been most of the time. People will tell you that the Mira and the Dreamcatcher will do a lot of the same things. One of the big problems we have is finding people like Robert. Finding EVS operators is a relatively straightforward process in most major cities. Finding someone that can run something else is non-trivial. I think that's part of the thing. Is it's been around for so long, and it's so. I don't know, Robert, if that's your experience or not, but it's.
Well, the principles are the same on a lot of these systems. So, you can get thrown into a Do-Re-Mi, which is a little more of a corporate level sort of system.
Right.
And it's wrought with all sorts of little traps. So you just kind of read the manual or talk to other operators and sort out where the gotchas are and try not to do that.
Yeah, and it's hard because you're just not using. But I think that I'm not familiar with the Rolland P20D for instant replays. But we'll take a look at it because it sounds interesting. I mean, again, we have to find other ways to do things like this. But today we're talking about the EVS, and that's really I don't know of a lot of other replay systems that, again, they're very capable. But if you're looking for instant replay, it gets pretty hard. I know that vMix has a system built into it. There's a couple other systems that will do it, and it's just of course, this is kind of we're kind of having a industrial scale conversation at the moment. But that's the challenge there. Next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Galistero, New Mexico. How much physical room does this system take up?
Go ahead, Robert.
Well, you saw the picture of the big server, so you need usually a good system will have 2 of those servers, so they can take up probably that much rack space. So you may have maybe a third of a full standard rack.
Yeah, we usually assume that with all the GAC that comes with it, a lot of times when we rent them, they come in their own box, so we don't put them in the rack. But when we put them in a rack, we usually assume that we carve out 24 spaces and a 48 space rack to just to know that the EVS has the room and of all the things that are necessary for it. Next question.
Dave Troutman from Edmonton, Canada. I love the AMPEX ACE. Used it a lot. I came from paper edits and edit decision list, which were great. Does an EVS store and recall EDLs?
Go ahead, Robert.
It stores and recalls timelines, and so we don't need the big list of time codes ins and outs, even though it actually is, it's just basically the EDL is just another controller. So in our all clips area, when we make edits, it's actually making clips, and they're just kind of generically named, but those clips are basically represented in the timeline. And for all intents and purposes, really are just, the timeline is just another version of a playlist. And just with a nicer GUI. So.
Next question.
And it's Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Galistero, New Mexico. What sports are using EVS?
I don't know what sports aren't using them.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's probably people don't have a budget for EVS, but even I think they're even trickling down to smaller college and school level. So.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of. I know Pac-12 was using, the last time I went through Pac-12, they were using dream captures, but what they did, they didn't have the, so there's, with a lot of college stuff, there's multiple layers of production. So if you're doing football, there's 8 trucks or 6 trucks or 12 trucks or whatever that are going to park outside the stadium. They're going to run into it, and there's going to be a truck of EVSs or whatever that's going to be there, and there's a big budget and everything else. When you get to when you get to the next level down, they can't put those trucks at every one of these, at the rugby shows, at the field hockey and all the other things that occur. But they are oftentimes required to deliver those. It's Title IX, process. And so what they do is they, what some of these networks have done is they'll take all of the they'll take all the games, and they have a little truck, this little van that shows up, and it will connect. For most of the colleges, they can use internet too, which is great. It's a great backbone that nobody else gets to use. So, but they can also use the switch and a couple other things to make that happen, and they'll flow all the signals, all the camera signals, and for the smaller ones, it's usually 5 to 8 cameras at most, back to the central control, and that used to be in San Francisco. And so they'll send it back to central control, and then they have the playback there. They have sometimes the announcers there, the audio mix, the edit, everything is all done centrally. And they have, I think that they had 3 or 4 of them so that they can have up to that many games running at the same time. And they can run them, but it all comes back to the same place. And the advantage of that, of course, is that you don't have to distribute all of that, all those resources. All the resources come back in. You're maximizing the use of the equipment to make that all work. I know it's a different show, but just to explain like how a lot of the sports get done, and that's how they can afford to use higher end playback systems, is because they don't have to deliver them to every event all the time. Is that that kind of REMI model, which I really feel like Pac-12 in many ways were one of the big pioneers. And they're gone now. I don't know if I don't know if they're gone yet, but this might be the last season for Pac-12. But I think that they really were a REMI innovator, for a long time. I mean, they were way ahead of it, of trying to figure out how to and this is dropping cost per show from, $50,000-$60,000 a copy to under 10 grand. So it's a, for these kinds of things, it's an important kind of puzzle there. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
This might be a NFL Films question, but back in the film days when they had a telecine down in the basement developing film and using it for playback, how did they deal with that? Because it's certainly not a non-linear system.
Well, NFL Films was not. I remember they talked about replay. I remember seeing there's somewhere on YouTube they have it like, this is the first replay. Like, we're able to, don't hang on, we're going to replay this video for you. Like you've never seen this before live. NFL Films, comes out later that week, so I don't think they had to worry about playback of that. But yeah, I remember there's some clip, I think somewhere on YouTube, that I just saw recently of them making a big deal about the fact that, hang on, we're gonna play this back for you so you can see it again. And I do think that the power of the EVS and the power of the replay is part of why we have so many complaints about our referees. Is those poor referees get to see it once at real time, and we get to watch it in slow motion over and over and over again. Makes it really hard to be a good referee. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, and to that point, that's also another part of EVS's business model, is selling very specific systems for referee recall playback, that they have to adhere to certain things to review a playback.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, I think that the one thing about it is that it really is very customized, and I think the advantage. We were talking about like what are less expensive versions of this. The hard part is that EVS is so ubiquitous in the market that. It's not just that they have a lot of market share; it's that they're learning from that market share all the time. So they're constantly refining the system based on how it's being used, and that gets into a really kind of a hard to get out of that.
Yeah, and they keep expanding their reach in terms of what they do. I mean, they have a switcher, and they have a router system now, and obviously everything you talk about with the Olympics. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've seen it. It looks pretty. It looks like a Ross.
Yeah, it looks really pretty. The first time I saw it, I was like, it's not quite knocking it out of the park yet. But it was.
But I think being tied to a router and other things and some pieces of automation is kind of what's making it powerful. And of course, I think we've touched in previous shows about how dominant EVS is at the Olympics and how they can, have a lot of centers of EVS operators remotely to any sort of
and that changed a lot in COVID, right? I mean, that was one of the big things in that COVID changes, that you have now EVS operators doing this from their house.
Yeah, and they're using the newer controller, the one in the middle, the VIA, and instead of a old clunky controller in the back, it's a RJ45. It's a network cable.
What we didn't discuss is
home.
what connector does the old one use?
I think it was RS-232, but
it is a 232.
Don't quote me. Yeah,
I have to deal with that a lot. That's why here's the problem with the RS-232. The cable only goes 15 feet.
Right. So in the studio, we just plug it into the bench. It's got a place. So, we have other controllers that go into there, like a DNF or, the other rudimentary player.
It has been the bane of our existence that it was 232 for that controller, and it only goes 15 feet before analog. It's an analog controller. And so IHSE makes these they make a lot of KVMs, but they do fiber extenders. And so when we need a controller on one side of the building and the EVS on another side of the building, that's a 232, and you use an IHSE to connect it, and it pops out as analog again on the other side of the building. But it was probably 4 or 5 years of me struggling with that until someone brought that box in, and it was magical.
Yeah, and even more magical now that it's networked, and that with an EVS is also introducing new products to have low latency monitors so that you can be remote with an LSM controller and low latency monitors and do it, work from home or remotely. So
industrial version of Zoom.
Exactly. So
go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, this is sort of like a Chris Fenwick question, so I apologize in advance. In a sporting situation where the ref says one thing and the EVS says something else, how do they deal with that? I mean, do they kind of downgrade the EVS, or do they say, "Oh, we have a technical problem, we can't do the playback," to compare it to what the ref
they've given up
said?
on that. They're full in, just showing you that it's a bad call. Like I think that's the problem that the refs have. Is there was a point where we were protecting them. I don't know, Robert, if you have any input, but it seems like we've stopped doing that.
I think people yelling back at the television kind of solved that problem.
Like I can see there are some bad calls that I see when I don't get a playback. I feel like somebody made a decision, like, oh, we're not going to show that one. That's just going to make people upset.
Well, and you've seen a game that if it's a bad call or a questionable call, they're playing it back over and over again, and then digging up all the different angles. But
occasionally I see one where it's obviously a bad call, like, and maybe they just don't have an angle on it. But I find it very odd, like, oh, that was a bad call, and you can see it kind of glance by, like that guy was just grabbing onto the dude, and they don't go back to it, and it's a I have thought about, because they hold every play, right? Defensive, offensive holding is every play. So when they call it, the question is, why did you call it this time versus the other times? Because everybody's holding every play, and so that's the hard part about watching replays, is that you can always catch them doing it in general. So anyway, Robert, thank you so much for coming on and talking about it. I was super excited to have you on, and part of what I wanted to do is just make sure people knew what it is, and know how it works, because I went through 20 years of being in the industry not knowing that it existed. So anyway, thanks so much.
And now with AI, by the way. So
now what does it do? What does the AI do?
The AI does is that they've been using it in sports now. So they have only certain machines that do super slow motion. It's usually tied to a high-speed camera. And you got to pay for a certain license on the EVS to have the high speed super slow mo feature activated as well. But that's only for so many cameras. So what they'll do is they'll clip something off where they want a super slow motion, make a clip, send it to extra motion, and they will make the frame in betweening with AI and then send it back to the operator within seconds. Wow. So basically any camera that they have can be turned into super slow motion with the AI feature. That's
incredible. That's really cool. Thank you to all the panelists for being on for the show for the first hour and the second hour. Thanks to the producers asking all these great questions, keeping us going. We really appreciate your contribution, and thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this show happen every day, 7 days a week. And if you're interested in, there's a volunteer area at the end of every email. If you're interested in being on that team and learning how we put this show together, go ahead and fill that out, and we'll reach out to you. We're always looking for new people to join our little crew to put this together. We traveled 42,000 miles and 68,000 kilometers, and that is 338 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. I didn't understand that the cue to go to this was let's go jump into After Hours until one day when I didn't do it, or Tuesday when I didn't do it. Then everyone was waiting for me. I was like, why are people waiting?
There's some old HD beta machines for you.
We didn't get to all the photos.
I do have some legacy photos that are kind of fun.
We'll have to find another excuse to have you.
We might have to have a combination Jeff Keithley show, because when one of the questions kind of referred to a lot of what Jeff does with pick his brain about his playback systems.
There should be we need to do a legacy show where we all just bring pictures of old things that used to happen.
You can buy one of those digi-beta decks for like $200 now.
I have them. They don't work. I have them. I'm going to put them in the set back here. So I'm working on it. I have